Best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
If you're a libertarian, and more people almost are identifying themselves as such, what do you do?
Even when they're not.
Yeah, even when they're not. Because what is a libertarian? And maybe that's really your first question. Then you got to ask Mark Skousen, who is the founder and producer of Freedomfest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Mark, welcome back.
Well, it's delightful to be back.
First of all, I guess you got to ask, what is a libertarian? Because there's different viewpoints on that. How do you define libertarian and libertarianism?
I think the tradition goes back to John Stuart Mill about how you really have as a libertarian, a right to do anything you want as long as you don't harm others. That's the general approach that we take, but basically it's maximum economic freedom and maximum social freedom. So it really crosses the political spectrum. This is why I really avoid this left-right dichotomy. I think it's out of it doesn't make any sense anymore. We need to get rid of it. We need to stop the political labeling and just treat people as individuals. This is what we do at Freedomfest as much as possible. And I get letters from people of all walks of life, all kinds of backgrounds, with all their political biases and vested interests, who really enjoy Freedomfest because we treat everyone as individuals rather than as groups. We need to get away from this group identification. You know, I know it's natural. We all want to have a label to say, I'm a libertarian, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Democrat or Republican or what have you, but maybe it's time we just said everybody's different and they needed to be treated civilly and with respect and open-mindedness. That's really what libertarianism is all about. It's not this doctrinaire, we have all the answers and you don't type of thing. I just think we need a more civil discussion rather than the yelling and screaming that you see on Fox News and MSNBC.
Hey, I don't think I could have put it better myself. So let me give you some real-life examples, Mark. Okay?
All right.
E-cigarettes. If I want to smoke an e-cigarette in the middle of Grand Central Station, and obviously I'm not going to hurt you, nobody's inhaling my secondhand water vapor, should I be able to do that?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on something like that. There really is clearly no evidence of harm to anyone else. Okay, sure, somebody is smoking and it might affect someone to say, oh, I'm going to smoke too, but that's part of life. As far as any kind of physical effect, there isn't any. I mean, it's just oxygen going into the air.
Okay, so I want to have a rocket launcher because I'm a big military aficionado. I like military memorabilia, and I like the fact that it works. And if I want to go shoot off missiles, is society right to tell me not to?
Yeah, I would cross. I think that's crossing the line because it's going to land somewhere and might kill somebody.
Okay, I agree with you there. I think you crossed the line. But I'm a hunter, I'm a gun enthusiast, but I'm a law-abiding citizen. Do I have the right to own a military-looking rifle and I intend to harm nobody?
Yeah, absolutely. That is, this whole idea that guns are only for hunters is a mistake. It's also for preservation. It's for self-defense, and it's also as an intimidation factor against government and these SWAT teams, and they have these powerful weapons. I don't see any reason why a private citizen shouldn't have them too, because that is an important element of protection and defense against the excess powers of government. So I'm pretty liberal in that respect when it comes to the use of all the different kinds of guns and bazookas and stuff like that. I mean, Doug Casey always goes around and says, hey, you should have a right to your own nuclear weapon.
Yeah, we're going a little over there. And I was going to raise Doug Casey as a point because he's an anarchist. He seems to believe that somehow we can all get along without any government, even a minimalist government, kind of running things. And do you think that's possible?
Well, every other year at Freedomfest, we have this debate. And actually, it's been probably 2 years since we've had the ultimate libertarian battle or debate over the anarchists and the limited government types. So maybe it's time to have it again. The last time we had it, John Mackey and I teamed up as limited government against Doug Casey and Tom Palmer, of all people. And that was a fun debate. I don't think they've ever won that debate because there's so many examples where things kind of fall apart. One of the arguments is that you can't use any force against a person. But the problem you have is suppose someone has murdered someone else, at least the alleged murder. You really have to force that alleged murderer to come to court. And I actually got David Friedman, who's an anarchist, to agree with me on that there's really no other solution. So sometimes you have to have a certain period of time when you put someone up, they have to put up bail and appear. You have to force that person to appear in court. So there is some element of compulsion involved with that degree. The other argument I use is the epidemic argument, where you need to quarantine people. I just don't see any way around that when you have that kind of epidemic of some kind of disease control situation. And the third one I use is purely libertarian. I mean, utilitarian. And I think it's a good one, but it's subject to disagreement. And that is, sometimes you just have to adopt eminent domain in order to create freeways that make it efficient to go from A to B. And otherwise, you get a city like the town of Boston, which is a horrible mess. You get lost constantly in Boston because it is a true anarchy type of environment where it just kind of grew up on its own, the old trails and so forth, as opposed to, say, Salt Lake City, that was very well organized from the very beginning by the Mormons and is run very efficiently, very little traffic problems. So which kind of society do you want to live in? Do you want to be stuck in traffic all the time? Because that's what you're going to get with the anarchy society. So maybe I've gone on a little too long, but those are my arguments.
Yeah, well, you look at private police, look at the way the railroads got built, and look at the Pinkertons.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want the Pinkertons running my police department because I don't want private people just deciding, that guy's a troublemaker. Let's just kill him tonight when nobody's watching and bury him. There's a lot of problems with the police today, especially in their militarized state, Mark. Let's face it, big problems. And as we head towards totalitarianism in the United States, there's a lot of problems that we're confronting. However, the Constitution still is a shield in a number of instances. But when you start dissolving the state, and then he who has the most money gets the best police force, and go back to the Carnegie riots at the steel mills,
yeah, when
they broke the unions, I don't think that's a desirable state of affairs. And I think the anarchists tend to just gloss over that.
You know the background of that Homestead strike?
Yeah.
Carnegie was, the unions negotiated an 8-hour-a-day work schedule from 12 hours. Mm-hmm. And after a year or so, Carnegie didn't like it and went back to 12 hours. So you can imagine why the workers were upset.
They were not real happy with this, rightfully. One could say that they had the option of leaving, which of course they did. And the fact is,
bad management. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, bad management, unenlightened management for sure. Yeah. And lots of problems with private police. Yeah, the anarchist is a little bit too idealistic for my bent. I just don't see man being that enlightened to exist. And let's face it, every culture, every tribe, there is a leader that comes forth. And in a complex society like we live in, how do you exist without leadership? I just don't see it. Yeah, no, I agree with you. So maybe you should be on our, if we do the debate this year, we can put you on the limited government side. I'm all
which will shock all of your followers.
Nobody would ever accuse me of being an anarchist, Mark, for sure. Hey, so I see we got PJ O'Rourke is on the roster for Freedomfest, which is one of my favorite authors. I can't wait to see him.
That's the first time he has decided to come. We became friends a couple of years ago, and I've always tried to get him to come out, and he's heard so many good things about Freedom Fest. The buzz is really very strong. In fact, I got an email the other day from a fellow who said, Freedom Fest is the event that has everything. I thought that was a pretty good line. Because there is a little bit of everything there, philosophy and history and humor and science and technology and healthy living and these big debates and things like that. You can see why a lot of people, it's nonstop for 3 straight days. It really is exciting. And I swear there are people at 3 a.m. still having animated debates at our conference in Las Vegas. And of course, there's a million things to do in Vegas in July, even with the hot weather. It really is a wonderful event. All the think tanks are now coming, the freedom organizations. That exhibit hall, we have Planet Hollywood, where it's, we're taking over the entire hotel, and it's really cool because the exhibit space and the breakout sessions and the lunch places and the Anthem Film Festival. We have our own theater. It's all in the same place, very close to each other, within walking distance. And so it makes for a really nice conference. And, of course, Stossel is coming this year and taping his show. We have a theme every year. Our theme this year is Big Brother, and we have a 2.5-minute video preview that everybody should look at. If they go to freedomfest.com, they can see the video and see what it's all about. And we have over 100 speakers. It's really a lot of fun.
And we're going to talk more about that up next on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And we are back with Mark Skousen on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. So Mark, how many years will this be now that you're doing Freedom Fest?
This will be our 8th year, so this will be, for the Chinese, a very good luck. Last year was our 7th year. We do a theme every year. We always hold it in Vegas because it's symbolic of libertarian / laissez-faire. It's very different from CPAC, which is the conservatives, and where do they meet? They meet in Death Star, Washington, D.C. They're into the power strain, and we're into freedom, and freedom is within the rule of law. We have a pretty good level of freedom in Las Vegas. Always a lot going on there, and it really is an exciting event. So I hope all of your people will sign up. We're probably going to sell out this year. We have enough for 3,000 people in the Celebrity Ballroom, and we had 2,500 last year. And with Stossel coming back, in fact, I was going to mention last year our theme was Are We Rome? Really resonated with people. In fact, Fox News re-aired the Stossel show, Are We Rome, 6 times, making it the #1 Stossel show in the history of his show on Fox News. So we think Big Brother is our theme this year will be really a theme that concerns everybody. And it's not just the surveillance state, but it's also the nanny state, the police state, the tax level, is the regulatory state. There are all kinds of elements of this big brother theme that the government knows, the state knows better than we do. We're going to have a lot of people talking about these various themes. For example, it's the 100th anniversary of World War I, and so we have the historian H.W. Brands coming, we have P.J. O'Rourke coming, Steve Forbes. These people are all historians about what happened, that the war that ended peace is the way we're describing it. And so we're going to do that. My wife, Joanne, who's an English professor, is going to be talking about all the different Big Brother novels out there, like 1984, Fahrenheit 451, the burning of books, Anthem, Brave New World. So there's going to be a lot of excitement there. And, of course, we have our financial conference, our 3-day investment conference, because if you don't have financial freedom, do you really have political freedom if you don't have any money to defend your interests? So that's important, and we have the exhibit hall that's going to be packed with freedom organizations and think tanks and bookstores, and a libertarian's dream there in many ways, covering the conference. And lots of speakers, lots of debates. We're going to debate insider trading. We're going to debate the minimum wage law. We're going to debate American foreign policy. It's going to be our mock trial this year, conservatives versus libertarians, those in favor of the Bush doctrine versus those who favor the more non-interventionist, isolationist policy. The mock trial is always a lot of fun. So anyway, it's a great conference, and I hope everybody can join us at freedomfest.com. It's July 9th through the 12th at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas.
Hey, I got a question for you, Mark, and you just kind of raised it. You didn't realize you raised it, but 100 years since World War I. Would World War I have been possible, the United States involvement, without the Federal Reserve?
Well, they certainly helped finance the war. Federal Reserve didn't really initially have that authority. It was, in a sense, supposed to defend the monetary system at the time, which was the gold standard. We were still on the international gold standard. We only went off it during World War I. And, yeah, I think it was an additional something in the background saying, well, if we start this war, we can finance it, not with taxation. The mobilization is going to require a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of supplies, war materials, a draft, all of those things. Who's going to pay for it? And you're right. I think the Federal Reserve was there to accommodate them in that respect. And inflation did take off. And I remember my grandfather was a farmer in southern Canada, in Alberta, Canada, and had huge harvest, booming harvests during that time because agricultural products had just gone through the roof. And, of course, then after the war, they totally collapsed. So you get that boom-bust cycle, which is very typical, and during the boom phase, it is fueled often now by Federal Reserve policy.
Yeah, so certainly it made it a lot easier, and really, probably would have happened anyway. The other thing that's interesting that many people, if you don't go back and study the whole time, the U.S. got in there very late in the game, as it were.
Yeah, 1917.
Right. And the reason why is because the U.S. barely had a standing army prior to World War I. And it took so long to field the army, to train them, and to mobilize them that the war was more than half over by the time the troops got to Europe.
Well, the problem was that there was this stalemate, and the French were stuck digging in those trenches against the Germans, and they were fighting it out year after year. They needed something to to tip the the favor toward the West, and that's where forced the Americans to come in. There's a couple of other things that's interesting about that era that we talk about in our 2.5-minute preview video, and that is that prior to the Great War, people could travel anywhere in the world without a passport. That is, if they were from these main European American countries. They didn't have, your papers, please. You could travel anywhere without a passport. They had no income tax. The income tax was created in 1913. And, of course, that helped finance the war, too, the fact that they could increase the income tax rate. And the tax rate went up to a huge percentage, I believe, during World War I, and then brought back down, but temporarily was a very high level. So you had that in the Federal Reserve. You had lots of things. This 100-year period, the World War I event was really a dramatic event, and we're going to have a whole panel on that with H.W. Brands, the historian, and some of the other history people that we're going to bring in there.
Hey, well, I can hardly wait for it. I've been to the past 3 in a row, and each one has been more fun and more interesting than the last. And so much of what's going on now in the world, you can gain a much better understanding of if only you studied history and see, history doesn't repeat. As we all know, the Mark Twain saying, but it certainly rhymes quite a bit, and it's rhyming now. But yeah, you learn so much by studying history and gives you a better understanding. Even if it isn't exactly what's happening, you get insights.
Another thing that we're going to do at Freedomfest is we're going to have 2 panels one's on the national think tanks. Can they make a difference? We all give money to Cato and Reason and Heritage and Fee and Goldwater Institute and stuff like that. We're going to put together a major national state think tank with all these organizations. Can they make a difference, or are they just stopping or slowing down the juggernaut of the Leviathan? And then we're going to do a state think tank, same thing, and how effective are these state think tanks? And just see, I think it'll be really good because in front of our audience, everybody gives all this money to these organizations, and are they using it just to feed their vested interests and their own lifestyle and hire their own employees and so forth, or are they really actually making a difference? And there are some examples, like in Michigan, where they have made a difference, or in Arizona with the Goldwater Institute and so forth. That's going to be really a fun debate type of topic that we're doing as well. We're also bringing in Harris Rosen, who is a CEO of Rosen Resorts and Hotels in Central Florida, who has done great strides in the private sector to provide an alternative to Obamacare and to provide a real war on poverty that's actually working. It's the 50th anniversary of the War on Poverty, the Civil Rights Act. There's all kinds of things, after Kennedy was killed, and we're talking about those the war on poverty. Is that we have Charles Murray coming, who's going to be talking about losing ground. Are we still losing ground? Which, of course, we are.
Yeah, for sure.
There are some great topics that we're going to cover this year at Freedom Fest.
All right. So where do we find the site and you, Mark?
Yep, freedomfest.com is the source, and just people should go there and see the video and so on. And regarding my own work, if they just go to markskousen.com, SKOUSEN, they can get information on that.
All right. And, of course, just follow the link, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Show notes, you'll get to both of those links. Mark, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you in July in Vegas.
All right, Terry. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.